Here's a question for you. If you're early on in your rum journey, do you really understand why a brand may release 4, 5, 6 different rums in their range and why you should buy different ones? Well, it's not as obvious as you might think. Many people abide by the philosophy that the more expensive the rum or the bigger the number on the front of the bottle, as in how many years it's been aged, just simply means better rum. But as I say, it is not quite as obvious as that. And I appreciate that this can be really confusing because it is a question I get in my comments quite frequently. People always ask me, why should I buy this rum over that rum in a range? You know, why do they have 4 or 5 different rums just merely kind of maybe aged 2 years longer? What is actually the difference? Well, that's what I'm hopefully going to shine a light on in this video. I'm going to take one brand in particular. I'm going to walk you through their range, why they release different rums at different ages and at different price points, and give you their use case scenario for them. And the brand I've picked, now don't switch off because I guarantee it, some of you are going to think, oh my God. The brand that I've picked is Bacardi, but I've picked this for a reason because I'm sitting here looking at 7 different rums. They have 7 different rums in their standard portfolio, and each of them have a very different use case. Now I say don't switch off because Bacardi inherently has this really, in rum world at least, has this really bad reputation. It all kind of stems from this. Openly and honestly, this is not the best white rum in the world. There are much better at a very similar price point, but from Bacardi's point of view, it is their biggest selling rum. You can't argue with it because it sells phenomenal levels the world over. So it's only in a small minority of people's heads that this is actually a bad rum. In the vast majority of rum world's heads, this is actually a really good rum. Now, I said I'm looking at 7 rums. I completely forgot I've got an 8th rum behind me, but I'll come on to 2 of these in a second. But I've been very careful to make sure that the rums I'm going to be talking about are available across most of their markets. This is definitely UK, this is definitely Europe, this is definitely Australia, this is definitely the US and Canada, South America. This is pretty much the standard Bacardi portfolio. Yes, there are a couple of other rums that they do release, but they're sort of niche products. They're not available. So the rums I'm inherently going to be talking about are these 6 rums. And yes, believe it or not, these 6 rums have very different use cases. And the other 2, just to very quickly shine the light on, are 2 spiced rums. Now, these are not really featuring in this video because this one is very much a UK only product. As I keep saying time and time again, newsflash, spiced rum here in the UK makes up at least 60% of the rum market. It is huge. So we've got very obviously variants of spiced rum. This is the one that's available in most markets, their traditional rum. But then we've got this one, the Caribbean Spice. They released this simply because Havana got there first with their Cuban spiced rum. It's kind of got a more fruitier profile to it, like coconut, pineapple with spices. We've kind of gone down that trend. You name it, here in the UK, we've got different flavors of spiced rum. It's a huge, huge market. So it's only right that Bacardi do actually release 2 different spiced rums. There might even be a 3rd spiced rum, and that's not even talking about the flavored rums that they release. The raspberry that I know of, I think there might even be a lemon, a citron, but there's also a coconut. So they're not going to be in this video, but you understand why they have these products. Now, just because I'm talking about Bacardi in this video, it doesn't mean to say that doesn't cross over to other brands. I could think of Appleton, I could think of Worthy Park, I could think of Don Q, I could think of maybe even Plantation, although they do sort of bracket their rums slightly differently and don't really go up in this. Even to a certain extent, Chairman's Reserve. I've just picked Bacardi purely because it is that globally recognized #2 biggest selling rum brand in the world. Today's video is sponsored by me. If you had a chance to download my free rum ebook yet, if not, you'll find the link below in the description of this video, or you can scan the QR code that's popping up on screen right now. My free rum ebook gets updated twice a year and it's packed full of interesting information and tips of how you can enjoy rum. It also includes a few basic rum cocktail recipes, plus how to make one of my favourites. This is a dragon fruit and papaya daiquiri. So what are you waiting for? As I said, you'll find the link in the description below, or you can scan that QR code. Right, back to the video. So let's dive straight in with the Bacardi Carta Blanca. You know, Bacardi's focal point for their whole business, you know, the amount of rum that this sells completely dwarfs the rest of their range. This is very important to them. Is it that bad? Not in the grand scheme of things. Unless you're a real rum devotee, you're really not going to go off into the realms of tasting different white and aged rums like I have. I know that this isn't my favorite white rum because I've tasted 15, 20, 25 other white rums and I know there's better. But for the vast majority, this is your standard daiquiri and mojito rum. It is dirt cheap. It is the rum that you would buy just to make up like rum punches and cocktails and if you're having parties, you know. £14 here in the UK, damn sight cheaper over in the US, maybe even cheaper in Europe. It's just your go-to rum. Many people, and this was certainly the case back in when I first started bartending in the mid-90s, many people associated this with the Cuba Libre, the rum and Coke. And yes, to a certain extent, it does feature in there as well. The other kind of mixer I might put with that is like ginger ale, for instance. It's got that profile, but Bacardi daiquiris, mojitos is very much where this rum sits. Now, the rum Bacardi actually market for the Cuba Libre, for instance, and slightly more in-depth mixes like your gingers, is the Bacardi Carta Oro, Bacardi Gold in some markets. This has got a little bit more Asian to it. It's obviously not been charcoal filtered to remove this. So this is the rum because it's been aged slightly, because then from barrel aging you do pick up vanilla notes and maybe a little prickle of spice. This is the rum that just works so well with your colas and with your ginger ales. Is it a neat sipper? No, but actually it's perfectly all right. You know, this is not going to be a rum fan's choice for a neat sipper, but yes, you can sip that neat, but it's not designed for that. It's designed for your mixer. The flavour profile you get off this is a very light tingle. It's vanilla forwards. I have actually got a little bit of banana-iness coming off there, which really surprised me, and a little bit of oranginess, maybe even a little bit of almondiness as well. Rum and Coke, rum and ginger ale, not neat sipping, not cocktails, with the exclusion of, I think a pina colada is going to sit perfectly with this. Rum, coconut, pineapple, just that little hint of sort of vanilla notes coming through there. For me, a pina colada sits much better with that than what it does the Carta Blanca. Then the next rum we go up to the Bacardi stables is the Bacardi Negra, and quite a lot of brands just really do a dark rum. Now, a dark rum, again, has a crossover, but a different use case to the gold rums that these brands produce. This will, I was going to say obviously, but it might not be obviously. It's darker. Yes, there might be a little bit of colour added to that as well. But you do inherently get from dark rums, Worthy Park, Plantation, Chairman's Reserve, Bounty, sorry, that's what I'm thinking of. You do inherently get those more toastier, oaky notes coming from it. Not because maybe intensely charred barrels. And what those notes kind of lend themselves towards, yes, rum and Coke again, but whereas this one is more ginger ale, this, a darker rum, because of those toasty notes, really does sit well with a ginger beer. Ginger beers tend to be more feistier, more oomph. That ginger ales are lighter kind of drinks. So that's where that sits for that. But then you've got the cocktail angle as well. Do you know what? On the taste, I'm not actually going to have a bad word said against that. Would it be my pick for the dark rum in my stables? I don't know. I think I would probably stick with Bounty. Bounty would be my go-to. But that's actually really good. So for this, the use case in this, you are talking about your hurricanes, your dark and stormy, so your ginger beers, your hurricanes, which is, in basic terms, rum, lemon or lime juice, and passion fruit juice, but actually you'd cross over to Fashionola. It would be a really easy, for a lot of bars, a really easy component in a Mai Tai as well. And heck, it'd even cross over into zombies. But I think the big use cases for me, yes, those cocktails, but for most of you, a different style of rum and Coke. I'm probably preferring that as a rum and Coke than I am that. And actually, the punch cocktails, those fun, fruity, juice flavours where you want a rum to stand up to that and not get lost. That is exactly what this rum is for. Now, to a lot of people, that might be obvious, but the sort of crossover comes, or the confusion comes, when you start stepping up in age ranges, because This is the lowest age one that they call for, and this is their Quattro, their 4-year-old rum. And when you've got an 8 and a 10 that are coming, you're like thinking, well, hang on a minute, why, if you've got your rum and coke, what, you know, and an 8-year-old, where does this sit? Now, not all of us rum lovers love, I say, you've heard this many times, love longer aged rums for neat sipping. So yes, this does give a decent step up from those into neat sipping. I'm quite happy with that, sipping neat, but for a proper out and out rum lover who's been drinking rum for a long time, there probably lacks the depth of flavour that a longer aged rum would give them. So while it does sort of satisfy some market needs for neat sipping, actually what this is primarily used for is a step up from that one. You know, it does give you more refined flavors. So it's going to give you, it's still cheap enough to mix, you know, it's still dirt cheap product. It's going to give you more flavors in a rum and coke. It's going to stand up in your ginger ales. For me, again, not so much ginger beer. Interestingly, it does, but it's not quite there for ginger beer. If I was actually wanted an aged rum for ginger beer, I'd probably go to the next one, but we'll move on to that in a second. This, again, another one for me would be a pina colada. This would be definitely an upgrade to that in a pina colada. This is what I'm driving at. Because it's spent more years in a barrel, at least 4 years in a barrel, it does pick up more vanilla notes, more caramel notes, more oaky notes. So when you are putting those bolder flavors against it, something like pineapple juice, for instance, in pina coladas, coconut maybe, your colas, that sort of thing, it does give you more body to that drink than what this would do. This will make a lighter rum and coke. This will make a slightly heavier going rum and coke, but not as heavy, not as, I don't want to say heavy. You've got sweeter, you've got very different notes coming off that, as I've explained, you know, sweeter, toastier, richer, molasses based notes coming off that. So see that as the big brother, if you like, to that rum. Similar, very similar profiles. That's just going to give you more grunt than what that is. This is a easygoing rum and coke. This is a bit more hard work rum and coke. But heck, do not be put off that as a neat sipper. I really do enjoy that. That's nice and light. It's got those lovely sort of peachy notes to it and apricot stone fruity notes to it. A little bit of vanilla-y notes coming off there. A little bit of barrel aging. For me, that is, you know, it's just an easygoing neat sipper when you don't want anything too complicated, when it's not been the end of a long work week and you want to sit down and relax with something. If you just want to enjoy something, that's where that sits. Now we're going right up to the Ocho, the 8-year-old. Ocho? It's Ocho. I'm sure it's Ocho. You're going up to the 8-year-old. Now, the 8-year-old, again, many people think this is, or think this as a neat sipping rum, and yes, it is. It is a vastly superior step up to your Bacardi 4-year-old. It's aged for a minimum of 8 years. It does give you more depth, more character, more flavour when you come into neat sipping. But actually, this does cross over into cocktail world as well, because while you might not use that in your rum fashions, in your Negronis, in your Manhattans, those kind of cocktails, those booze forward cocktails, you would definitely use something like this. And to take this a step further into cocktail world, this actually stands up a lot better than what that does in your tiki cocktails. Now, bearing in mind, sometimes you want, with some tiki cocktails, you want your Jamaican pot still, your Appleton, maybe even like Barbados and St. Lucia, those kind of rums. Actually, I'm going to take Barbados out for that, because for me, you could quite easily swap this in for your Barbados rums. Like long-term followers of mine will know that I do use the Don Q7 a lot in tiki cocktails. It's probably my kind of preference, but it does give you that kind of thing. So, you know, don't think of this as primarily a neat sipper. It is an elevated cocktails where you don't want the rum to get lost, where you want the rum to sort of stand out. You know, rum fashions, Negronis, that's going to kind of get lost. That will give you a little bit more flavour, but the 8-year-old will definitely give you a more booze forward rummy flavour, which is what you want in those cocktails. And then we move on to the final one, the Diaz. Now, for me, this is pretty much the neat sipper of Bacardi's range. I still class the 8-year-old as the gateway neat sipper, but for me, to cross over into a rum world where people really do like those longer aged rums. It is all about this one. I wouldn't use this. Price has got a factor in this as well, but I wouldn't necessarily use this in cocktails, except for maybe your rum fashions where you just want to add a touch of sugar, maybe a bit of bitters to this, and maybe a Manhattan. But to make this crystal clear, when rum is aged, it picks up real different subtle nuances in flavors. You get different layers going on. Whereas something like this, the gold that is down here, very kind of, not one-dimensional as such, but vanilla or caramel and that. You get loads of different notes coming off something like this. And when you start mixing those in cocktails with big, bold flavors, that's when they get lost. So it's not the fact that I'm saying that this is too expensive to use in cocktails. The whole point I'm saying is this has got too many flavors, too many layers that actually don't add anything to a cocktail because they will get lost. But as a neat sipper, that's delicious. For me now, after my kind of journey, that is my preference over the 8 as a neat sipper. I definitely love this. Yes, there is a little bit more barrel, a little bit more hard work, those oaky notes, but you get vanilla. I'm going all over the place here. Vanilla, banana, apricot, peach. Definitely a little bit of sort of prickly spice from the oak that's coming off there, like cinnamon, nutmeg. But it's just a gorgeous all-round decent neat sipper that if you did use that in a pina colada, if you did use that in a rum and coke, if you did use that in a Negroni or anything like that, you are going to lose those kind of little nuances. And that's where these two kind of fall in. So hopefully you now understand of the different use cases of different rums in a range. I have to say, if you do properly go down a rum journey, brands like this do make it hard, because while you have got some crossovers, if you really want to make like your favorite rum and cokes, and if you really want to make really good cocktails, you kind of do need a little bit of everything. Like if I didn't have that, if I was just a Bacardi fan and didn't have that, I wouldn't enjoy daiquiris and mojitos with the gold, for instance. But then if I just had that, I wouldn't enjoy rum and cokes. I would need something like this. And if I didn't have the Negro, for instance, the dark rum, it's just going to make a completely different pina colada, different hurricane, and a dark and stormy, a rum and ginger beer. So these brands are quite clever in that. But this is the whole point I want to make. Rum is so diverse. It's the most diverse spirit category in the world. And don't just think one rum fits all, because it really doesn't. Even if I put Worthy Park here, for instance, who would probably put, maybe 4 or 5 rums in this. They've got an overproof in there as well. I would still give you that same sort of breakdown. But the point I want to make there is that even if I swap this for Worthy Park, if I swapped, let's just get the Worthy Park Select here, which is their kind of gold rum, and maybe put it against those two, you are definitely going to make very different cocktails with that compared to that. So do not think these are like for likes. It's just the flavor profile, their use case scenarios. The point to emphasis, all rum tastes completely different, but take this ethos throughout the brand's portfolio to understand their use cases. Right, I hope that all made sense. Don't forget to leave your comments below of what other future videos you'd like me to make. I look forward to reading those. I'll see you in the next one.